Therefore, today, I'm announcing that we have suspended negotiations with this Israeli government on a new free trade agreement. We will be reviewing cooperation with them under the 2030 bilateral roadmap. The Netanyahu's government's actions have made this necessary.
I say to President Macron, Prime Minister Carney, and Prime Minister Starmer, when mass murderers, rapists, baby killers, and kidnappers thank you, you're on the wrong side of justice.
I'm referring to the Prime Minister's joint statement with France and Canada. That statement and actions of this government have now been supported by Hamas, a terrorist organisation that I prescribed as Home Secretary. They've actually put out a statement. I'm sure the Foreign Secretary has seen that.
Hello MV UK, it's Pete here. Welcome back to the channel. And we're going to have a look at, we're going to just run through some of David Lammy's comments that he made on Tuesday in the Commons. Now, I wanted to pick this up. It's played out every day. It's sort of played out a little bit more and more and more. And one thing I've noticed is there's no coverage of this escalation at all on the mainstream media, or none that I felt has been appropriate considering the weight of what David Lammy is saying outwards towards Israel. It's been widely condemned that it's supporting Hamas. So you saw the opening clip where he says that he's suspending free trade talks with Israel. He is making a couple of other things. And please, I always forget this at the top of the show, but if you don't mind, hit the like button and subscribe. It really makes a difference. So we'll get on with it now. So the suspension of the trade talks, and, you know, it is what it is. A second thing, and you can watch this back yourself. You can type in David Lammy, sanctions on Israel or something along those lines, and you'll see it in a heartbeat on the internet. So the second thing he wants to do is condemn Israeli military operations. Recently, they started to go into another air offensive and limited ground offensive to flush out, destroy Hamas and rescue and retrieve and bring home the hostages. On October the 7th, 23, the most horrific attack happened on Israel, and you can hear it from Netanyahu himself. So we're going to play out the end of the video with his 8 or so minute reaction to these comments by David Lammy and these things that he's putting in place. David Lammy also calls for humanitarian aid access to be allowed in. We'll get more to that in a little while because there has been some movement on that, which is good news. The sanctions, he also wants to put on sanctions to settler violence. Well, out in the West Bank, there's a lot of, it's deemed as Israeli territory. Well, the Israelis are claiming it and settling on it, a bit like the Wild West in America many years ago. They're doing a similar thing there. Obviously, it's condemned because they feel that that land belongs to Palestine. So he wants to have sanctions on settler violence. Then he wants the reinstatement of UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. I had to read that there. And because that's been suspended, the UK committed £21 million, some more money going out the door by David Lammy. He's tell you what, he is like a champagne Charlie, isn't he, this guy? To support humanitarian efforts in Gaza and the West Bank. Now, I'm all for humanitarian efforts, but as you'll see in a moment from Netanyahu, Hamas keep that aid, they rebuild themselves, and then they re-attack Israel. They all they want is death to Jews. They want to wipe out the Jewish race. This is almost like the Germans again. But besides, so anyway, who's holding him to account is what I say. So Priti Patel has given him a damning dress down in the House of Commons. She states she points out quite articulately that when she was the Home Secretary, she prescribed Hamas as a prescribed terrorist organisation And now, because of what David Lammy is doing against Israel, those steps that I've just mentioned, Hamas has put out a statement thanking the UK, French and Canadian governments, thanking them for what they're doing. We've got terrorists thanking us. What the hell is going on here? We should be going in there and supporting Israel to get the hostages out. America supporting getting the hostages out. They understand the value of human life, not human life being used as a shield. But there you go. So the problem with this, right, is this escalates and this gets out of control. And people see this as a turning in the tide to what Hamas is going, in some people's eyes, is becoming terrorists to freedom fighters. And they're going to start acting on the cause and doing heinous things. Just on Thursday itself, whilst there was a good news of a lot of aid vehicles, I think 91 aid vehicles being allowed into Gaza, which included things like baby food, flour, medical equipment, and several bakeries, it was reported, began baking bread with the flour on the Thursday as it arrived. So it was fluid. But then on the other side of the spectrum, in Washington, in America, in DC, 2 Israeli embassy staff members were ruthlessly gunned down, shot, dead, no coming back, by a guy brazenly lauding himself. And when he was arrested and they were taking him away, he was shouting "Free Palestine." And where does this end? I mean, what is the end game? What is the end game for these protesters? If you see this image here, imagine all these people now picked up a gun and started shooting people because they didn't like it. They felt emboldened. They felt, enabled by people like the UK government, the French government, the Canadian government, speaking up against Israel. They're now going to feel like they're allowed to escalate this to the next level. No, you mustn't do this. We must have peace. We can talk about this. Anyway, Netanyahu does talk about this. So the following day, he releases a statement online, in the press, online, wherever I saw it online. And I'm going to end the video with him speaking out about the incident, the governments, and what they're doing and why they're doing it. And I think it's important, with all of the propaganda, all of the smoke screening, all of the talk about genocide, no one's talking about the atrocity that happened that spurred this on, and no one's talking about the release of the hostages. Yes, it is bad news that Gaza is being bombed. I don't like it. I don't think it's healthy. I think that the healthy thing is to release hostages, and that can end. Why aren't Gaza people ganging up and flushing them out? I know it's hard and scary, but when does it end? When does it end? So here's Netanyahu. Before I go, I will ask, if you've thought about this, if you didn't know any of this was going on, do leave me a comment. Let me know what you think and feel. Please try and be balanced. I'm reporting a balance, so be balanced yourselves. It's not a competition. I just want to know what you think about what David Lammy has said, what Netanyahu is saying, the general feeling about things. If you have liked the content of this video, please give it a like. It does help to push it to more people who would get value from the information I'm sharing. Most of the information I'm sharing I got from a combination of sources online, so it's all reportable. Now, I will leave you here, and I'll speak to you soon on the next one. That's Pete from MV UK.
Last night in Washington, something horrific happened. A brutal terrorist shot in cold blood a young, beautiful couple, Yaron Lishinsky and Sarah Milgram. Yaron had just bought an engagement ring for Sarah. He was planning to give it to her in Jerusalem next week. They were planning to start a new and happy life together. Well, that tragically did not happen. Yaron and Sarah weren't the victims of a random crime. The terrorist who cruelly gunned them down did so for one reason and one reason alone. He wanted to kill Jews. And as he was taken away, he chanted, "Free Palestine." This is exactly the same chant we heard on October 7th. On that day, thousands of terrorists stormed into Israel from Gaza. They beheaded men, they raped women, they burned babies alive, they butchered 1,200 innocent people and took 251 innocent people hostage to the dungeons of Gaza. A short time afterwards, Chancellor Scholz of Germany visited Israel. And after he saw the horrors, he said to me, "These Hamas terrorists are exactly like the Nazis." He was right. And if they could get away with it, these Hamas terrorists would have slaughtered every last Jew on earth. For these neo-Nazis, Free Palestine is just today's version of Heil Hitler. They don't want a Palestinian state. They want to destroy the Jewish state. They want to annihilate the Jewish people who've been in the land of Israel for 3,500 years. I could never understand how this simple truth evades the leaders of France, Britain, Canada, and others. They're now proposing to establish a Palestinian state and reward these murderers with the ultimate prize. Well, for 18 years, we had a de facto Palestinian state. It's called Gaza. And what did we get? Peace? No. We got the most savage slaughter of Jews since the Holocaust. You won't be surprised to learn that Hamas thanked President Macron and Prime Ministers Starmer and Carney for demanding that Israel end its war in Gaza immediately. Hamas was right to thank them, because by issuing their demand, replete with a threat of sanctions against Israel, not Hamas, these three leaders effectively said they want Hamas to remain in power. They want Israel to stand down and accept that Hamas's army of mass murderers will survive, rebuild, and repeat the October 7th massacre again and again and again, because that's what Hamas has vowed to do. I say to President Macron, Prime Minister Carney, and Prime Minister Starmer, when mass murderers, rapists, baby killers, and kidnappers thank you, you're on the wrong side of justice. You're on the wrong side of humanity. And you're on the wrong side of history. Now, these leaders may think that they're advancing peace. They're not. They're emboldening Hamas to continue fighting forever. And they give them hope to establish a second Palestinian state, from which Hamas will again seek to destroy the Jewish state. And mind you, it's not going to be a state free of Hamas. When you establish a Palestinian state, we've seen it. The radicals take over. Iran sends them in and they take over. So don't give us this talk. It'll be a peaceful Palestinian state. It won't be. But the hypocrisy doesn't stop there. These and other leaders have bought into Hamas's propaganda that says Israel is starving Palestinian children. And not only is Hamas putting out this lie, a few days ago, a top UN official said that 14,000 Palestinian babies would die in 48 hours. You see, many international institutions are complicit in spreading this lie. The press repeats it, the mob believed it, and a young couple is then brutally gunned down in Washington. So here are the facts. Since October 7th, Israel has sent 92,000 aid trucks into Gaza. That's right, 92,000 aid trucks. That includes 1.8 million tons of aid. 1.8 million tons of aid. More than enough food to feed everyone in Gaza. Yet as we had let the aid come in, Hamas stole it. They took a huge chunk for themselves. The rest they sold at exorbitant prices to the Palestinian population. And then they used the money they stole to recruit new terrorists to continue their war against Israel. Our goal from the start was to get food to Palestinian civilians, not to Palestinian terrorists. So we consulted with our American allies. What do we do to prevent Hamas from looting the aid? Well, together we devised a mechanism to achieve this goal. American companies will distribute the food directly to Palestinian families. They'll do so in safe zone secured by our military. And this will allow us to complete our goal of destroying Hamas while enabling aid to reach the civilian population. We'll complete the construction of the first distribution zones in the coming days. Ultimately, we intend to have large safe zones in the south of Gaza, and the Palestinian population will move there for their own safety while we conduct combat in other zones and receive humanitarian aid there without Hamas interference. In the meantime, we authorized letting trucks enter Gaza to provide for immediate needs. Yesterday, I think more than 100 trucks went in. More will come in today. I tell you this, no army in the world has ever gone to such lengths to provide aid to the civilian population in the midst of intense combat. And Hamas, of course, opposes this. It shoots Palestinian civilians who want to leave for safe zones, and it shoots Palestinian civilians who want to prevent Hamas terrorists from looting the aid trucks intended for them. As for the hostages, we'll do every effort to secure them. I'm ready for a temporary ceasefire to get more out, but we demand, and you should demand, that all of our hostages be released, and released immediately. And so should every civilized country demand this. We're in an intense seven-front war that was launched against us by Iran and its proxies. Sometimes in war, accidents happen. One such incident happened the other day in Jenin, and thankfully no one was hurt. Our military has expressed its regret over the event because we don't target civilians or diplomats. We target terrorists. Exactly the opposite of Hamas. They target civilians, ours, and they hide behind civilians, theirs. They use them as human shields. That's a double war crime. But I don't hear that coming from any one of those countries that criticize Israel. For those who say that Israel stands alone, I say we're not alone. Justice stands with us. The truth stands with us. History stands with us. And so do countless people around the world who can tell the difference between right and wrong, between good and evil. I want to thank all of them. And I especially want to thank President Trump and the American people for their forthright stand with Israel and with the Jewish people. Together we stand, together we'll triumph, and we'll see the victory of civilization over barbarism.